Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Chairman Soliday, should come as no surprise. CAC is strongly opposed to House Bill 1421. I think our position on CWIP has been clear in this building for almost 50 years now. But what we do with CWIP is we continue to insulate the utilities and their shareholders and their investors from any risk associated with these projects. Not only do we insulate the utilities from risk related to fuel costs through the FAC, all of that risk borne by customers, price fluctuations. With CWIP, we insulate the utility and their investors from cost overruns, from schedule delays, and place that back on consumers. And we add trackers to their bills that increase their monthly electric utility bills for an asset that is not yet providing them any service or any benefit. Speaking of cost overruns, I was trying really hard not to talk about Edwardsport during this session. But Edwardsport, yes, Edwardsport, in our opinion, should be the poster child of why CWIP should be repealed from Indiana statute. They told us $1.985 billion approved. Within weeks after that, they said, did we say 1.985? We meant 2.35 billion. $4.5 billion later, we have Edwardsport. That is the type of risk that we're talking about and exposing customers to. We've been building natural gas plants without CWIP for a long time. AES built Eagle Valley without CWIP. Converted Harding Street just fine. No issues, no delays. The risk is appropriately borne by investors. Those costs are appropriately recovered in a base rate case when the commission and the public and other stakeholders have the ability to look under the hood of the utility rather than just allowing the utilities to continue pancaking costs upon cost upon cost on utility bills. Let's take a look at their whole books. Where have they realized savings? CAC strongly believes that it's a continued policy, these type of trackers, that is the primary cause of the affordability crisis that we face today. We created regulatory commissions primarily to act as a surrogate to competition, to keep investor-owned utilities in check, notoriously profligate with capital. Let's create a regulatory commission to act as competition in the absence thereof, and yet we continue to pass bills that compel them to approve these things, that pass costs and risk on to customers, eliminating their discretion, their flexibility, their authority. So let's go back. Let's get rid of CWIP. Let's reject this bill. To us, this isn't about wind, solar, gas, coal, all of that stuff. If anything, I think that conversation from PJM showed us that natural gas was not there when we needed it most. So Citizens Action Coalition respectfully requests that you protect your constituents, who's your ratepayers, and reject this bill. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Questions for Kerwin-Olson, Senator Breaux, and then Senator Yoder.
Just real quickly, Kern, who is the audience that would be impacted by CWIP? Is it a particular utility, or is it all utilities across Indiana?
Well, I think that's part of the problem here is this opens up the door for all of the utilities. All of the utilities have plans to build new natural gas plants or convert coal plants to gas in the near future, which is another problem. We are very concerned that what we are doing is encouraging and incentivizing the building of a significant amount of natural gas capacity that we don't really need. Do we need some? Sure. I think CAC will concede. We'll see some gas being built over time, but how about we think about regional cooperation, just like we do with the grid? Why pass legislation that encourages and incentivizes investor-owned utilities to build their rate base, increase their earnings, to build gas plants that are going to run 2% of the time? Why do we want to spend billions and billions of dollars to address those needle peak hours?
So, Kern, if we pass this bill, that means that we would not have to come back to the legislature. Other utilities, IOUs, would not have to come back to the legislature to do CWIP projects. The law would already be in place. They could just use the law as it is.
They would have CWIP for everything other than burning tires and trash.
Senator Yoder is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Olson, for your testimony. So we have CWIP in Indiana. Do other states have an equivalent of CWIP?
Sure, other states do have CWIP. I couldn't tell you who does and who doesn't.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Are there states who don't do CWIP?
I would expect so, sure.
I'm just curious about the difference, because I guess what I'm understanding now is CWIP was passed in Indiana to avoid maybe the sticker shock of a utility, of an asset coming on and then having the expense of that, the interest, the expense of that being put onto ratepayers at the end of it, versus CWIP allows for the risk to be, I don't know, shared or taken on by the ratepayers, and some of that money being before the asset ever is up and running, we're paying, the ratepayer is paying for it, so there isn't that sticker shock. So I would love to see a breakdown of the average, what the difference is state by state. You know, what a ratepayer would pay and the benefits of.
Well, I would make one comment. We
things.
passed CWIP in the state of Indiana simply to enable Duke Energy to build a coal gasification power plant known as Edwardsport. That's where it started. And when you talk about other states, number one, we also have to consider there are vertically integrated states like Indiana. There are deregulated, restructured states in Indiana where the utilities don't own the generation. So CWIP is not needed because those are built through private investments in private companies. And so that would come into, so those states would likely not have CWIP because those are restructured, deregulated states, not vertically integrated like Indiana.
Okay, and we.
Not that I'm supporting deregulation, don't take me
I
wrong.
was just going to say, I'm not sure we want to go down that road, but okay. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Senator Bro with a follow-up.
So, Kerwin, how do you speak to the point that is raised by Representative Soliday when he says that without this, if the investor-owned utility makes the investments, then the consumer is going to be borne, the consumer will bear the cost of all of the cost, an inflated cost at the very end of the project, and they will see a huge and immediate jump in their bill versus spreading it out over the process of the construction?
Well, we don't necessarily agree because under traditional rate making, the way gas plants are treated today, in order to recover those costs from customers, a utility company has to file a full-blown base rate case, which means, again, the public, stakeholders, and others get to look under the hood of the utility, look at their entire books, interest rates, financing costs, what has retired, what's no longer needed, that sort of thing. And so rates go up and down in rate cases. So we certainly understand the argument about rate shock versus incremental increases, but we don't necessarily agree because a rate case, we've seen rates go down in rate cases, even with new assets and revenue requirements. So we don't necessarily agree, but we understand the point. But it's also the incentive of allowing utility companies to nickel and dime customers that causes concern. It's that incentive that adds those extra costs to customer bills that are, in our view, unfair.
Further questions for Kerwin Olson? Thank you.